Now, to give you a brief overview of what we are going to be discussing, games built on the blockchain is supposed to bring the next level of awesomeness for gamers, but the problem is, where are they coming from? And what is being done to attract users? And how can you continue to engage the user? Now, introducing Kyle Liu, which is the founder and CEO at Dap.com, as our next moderator. And I shall let the video do justice to the rest of the panelists. So please give them a round of applause to welcome them up on stage.
Welcome to BlockShow. My name is Kyle Liu. I'm the moderator of today. So let me do a quick intro before I introduce all the panelists. So I'm the CEO and founder of Dap.com. We are the largest dApp analytics and distribution platforms. We track over 3,000 dApps performance, including games, casinos, and decentralized exchanges on 7 major blockchains. So why don't we just start, and we have a lot of good, cool top-tier blockchain games today, and then we have JEHAN from Kenetic, who is the leading VCs invest in the space. So guys, why don't we start with GABBY to introduce the company and what you do in blockchain games.
Hi everyone, my name is GABBY DIZON from Altitude Games. So I come from 16 years in the game industry. We started Altitude Games 5 years ago to do mobile games, and since 2017, we've been making blockchain games. So now we have a game out called Battle Racers, and it's a game that's currently on Ethereum.
Hi, I'm JEHAN. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Kenetic. We're a Hong Kong-based investment firm. We've been around since around 2016, and I also run the Ethereum meetup and one of the founders of the Bitcoin Association. We've invested pretty heavily in the blockchain and crypto space. Our current fund is an equity-focused blockchain technology fund, and we also invest opportunistically in tokens.
Yeah, hello. My name is PAVEL. I'm a senior producer of company 0x Games. We started to develop crypto games in 2017. Before, we worked in different companies in the gaming market, like HeroCraft, Mail.ru Games. I had my own company, and now we have 3 crypto games, and one of them are headliner 0x Universe, actually in the top of the DApp radar. So we're really proud about that. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is VLADIMIR TOMKO. I'm the co-founder and CEO of blockchain Cuties Universe. I've been 15 years into gaming, and we also started developing our game blockchain Cuties Universe in 2017. So at the moment, we're the only game that runs on 4 blockchains simultaneously. That includes Neo, Ethereum, EOS, and Tron. And we're also one of the top games on 4 blockchains.
Okay, so thanks, guys. So let's start with the reason why you're building blockchain games, right? And you can build there are so many platforms, so why blockchain? That's the reason why everyone was here as well.
Okay, so I guess I'll get started. We started experimenting with smart contracts in early 2017. It was more of a research project on our end to see maybe what blockchain and cryptocurrencies can do for games. And we were a few months into this research when CryptoKitties came out in late 2017. And when we saw that NFTs really had the power to change games because the items that you have, the assets were permanent. And this would have a profound impact on how economies are designed around games. And yeah, so that's what got us building blockchain games.
Cool.
So I guess my turn. So we shift our focus to the crypto games because we really believe that it will be next generation of the gaming product. And as far as we game development professionals, we decide that we should work on the frontier of industry and deliver that kind of content.
Cool. How about you, Vlad?
We jumped into crypto games when we saw the birth of a new market in 2017. I've seen like 4 different gaming markets being burned, and they usually develop using like the same spiral model. So if you jump in early, you usually get to be like near the biggest piece of the market. So we decided to shift focus here because native mobile applications is a red market right now. It's harder to do something unique and to be like distinct. And the second part is that blockchain gaming closes us towards how the real economy works. Like, for example, if you buy a car, you can sell it on a secondary market and say Mercedes can't do anything about it. So in regular games right now, you sign the EOLA where it's stated that you rent this asset. If you like behave yourself inappropriately, cheat, developer just bans you and all the money that you've spent is lost. So in blockchain gaming, in true blockchain gaming, it's not that way because you still have their assets, you own them. And this is something very important. And the whole idea that you can monetize your time spent inside the game is pretty good. And my personal hat on this is that I also think that blockchain gaming in the future will help developing countries with new working places. For example, say you're a kid, 12 years old, somewhere in Africa, and your dad like works, I don't know, like somewhere, maybe in a quarry, and he earns like this much money. And you as a kid play blockchain games, so you like sell the assets, and at some point you may earn as much as your dad and help your family. This is something that we've never seen before in the regular gaming market.
We don't, on our side, we don't really we don't build games, but we did get into the blockchain gaming space over a year and a half ago when we did our first conference, Nifty, around the digital asset space. And I think I would echo some of this. I mean, I look at games not necessarily as games, but an extension of the virtual space, which is kind of blockchain based and allows for a new type of environment. I think that the assets and the activities, and more importantly, the economies that are inside games is really the kind of precursor to the types of virtual interactions, virtual worlds that we'll all be experiencing. I think that games are really like the first the first killer app for these worlds because there's something to do, there's an intention. But the development of these economies and assets, and really, if you think about how the financial world works, digital assets and NFTs and all the kind of assets inside have a very, very long way to go when you start to have derivatives on the top of these assets. And so the games are basically creating a context and a meaning and an intention for these assets. Of course, it's fun as well, but where it goes is that casual gaming, which leads into actual just virtual worlds and virtual economies, that's kind of where I see it. And that's why I think it's an incredibly exciting space.
Can I add a couple of words? Vladimir mentioned about the advantage of the crypto games, that it's not just a wasting of time, and you definitely will have something after you finish your game. But I think there are 2 more advantages of crypto games, more obvious for us. First of all, it creates another level of meta playing above the game. So it's some kind of activities that players can do outside the game, and it will be directly affect the gameplay. Previously, it exists only in like a gray markets for World of Warcraft or other MMORPG games, but now we can regulate these things and put it inside the gameplay and think about that while we are creating in games. And second things, it's most interesting from my view, is that we actually can use different assets in different games. We can create another game with the same assets, or even we can create assets from another developer to create some additional stuff for our game. For example, if now you have some CryptoKitties in your wallet, and our system will recognize it, and 0x Universe, you have your own planet, and CryptoKitties will live on your planet. So, and all the players like it because community understood that it's not just a separate development, it's like common infrastructure. Thank you.
I want to add something regarding your words. That's true, but like the full interoperability that people spoke about, in a lot of different conferences, isn't here yet because you can use something as a base, for example, as in 0x universe, and show like CryptoKitties on the planets, but you can't like totally handle those tokens because you're not the smart contract owner. You can just use it as it is. If you want to add something, add information, it's impossible. So true interoperability isn't here yet. And when you just copy something and add something we basically create a lot of excess content on the blockchain. Like copies of assets in other games, which are copies of other assets, and so on and so on. So I think this also needs like to be discussed on a separate topic.
Yeah. When do you guys think that interoperability is going to be coming? When do you guys anticipate it arriving?
2 years' time, maybe a year and a half, but it all depends whether the market really needs it, because it's still a big question. At some point, it is very good for developers. No, not developers, the players. If you buy something like in Engine, for example, they have like this predefined set of lists. For example, you buy a hammer, and you can use it in your game. That's nice. For a player, because you can buy something once and use it like in all the other games. But for a developer, at some point, if it gets really big, it might be not worth it, because just examine, you onboard a player who doesn't want to buy anything in your game because he already has it. And that's not very good. So it should be limited.
From user engaging perspectives, it makes sense. Because if you have something to start the play, so you definitely will start.
Yes, but if you do paid user acquisition and you pay to acquire like $10, $12, like hundreds of users, and they don't buy anything even in the long run because they have like majority of stuff already, it becomes very expensive for you.
That's our work, to make something exciting inside the game, to let player pay for that.
So I guess you guys mentioned about user acquisition, right? So who are really playing your games right now? Like, where are those users? Are they coming for investment in NFT, or are they playing for the fun of the game? What do you guys think?
I can start here. Well, majority of our users are males, 25-45. The core audience is 27-35. They have trading backgrounds, majority of them, and only some of them have gaming backgrounds. So basically, because like right now, all the people who have money, they're like 30 plus, and they used to play games in their childhood during their youth, so they know a lot of stuff, but it's not their like field of expertise right now. So what we see is that people who played games, they loved hardcore games, because when we try to create the assets that are based off other games as a hardcore like projects, they usually buy those very quickly. If we create something casual, it doesn't work as intended. So, but the real question is where to get those users. Actually, right now it's getting a little bit better than it was a year ago, but it's still pretty bad. So Facebook is towing up. You still can't do full-fledged like advertising on Facebook. Google still forbids doing crypto. So you need to go to like crypto outlets like Cointelegraph. You need to work with communities and dApp trackers like dAppRadar, like dApp.com, of course, like State of the dApps, and so on. The thing is that right now you can't do anything exclusive. You need to be everywhere, because the whole market, if we're speaking about the NFT games without the casinos, it's pretty small. It's like 150,000 people total. So, and if we speak about the resources such as like dApp.com, they have like loyal audience, which you definitely need to onboard, but it's like finite. If you're like advertising there for say like, I don't know, like half a year, majority of the people who wanted to play your game already got exposed and tried it out. So you always need to be like everywhere. And because the audience is very small, you need to do a lot of collaborations and community stuff. Try to probe completely different audiences. And we also thought that on making a version of our game on different blockchains, like we're on 4 right now, would serve the purpose of like doing multi app store onboarding. For example, like if we work like with Tron, we'll get exposed to Tron audience, and that's true. That is true. You get some additional users, the audience that you weren't able to penetrate before, but it slows down your development. So, for example, we are 4 times slower than we were in 2018. We need to make the team bigger to compensate on that, because each feature that we're allowed should be supported on 4 blockchains. So last year, I was completely sure that was a good strategy for user acquisition, and this year I'm not sure, because...
Yeah. I think it's interesting. This is one of the things that I struggle with as an investor when we get pitched all the time, like, hey, look at this game, look at this game. And to be honest, I haven't really invested in any particular specific games. One, because from a VC perspective, investing in individual games is highly risky. It's like investing in a restaurant or investing in a movie. It's a hit-driven type of thing, and economically, this is why most VCs don't invest in games. They might invest in a studio, but even that. So that's the first barrier. The second barrier is that the business models and also the business models and revenue models are also unclear. So one project that we did invest in is called Forte. So Forte is actually started by a guy named Kevin Cho. He had an almost $1 billion exit for his company, Kabam, which is one of the larger mobile gaming companies. And he started something called Rally, which is tokenizing the experience between streamers and their audiences so that the audience can play games with each other while they watch a streamer. So it's another meta layer on top of the stream. So that's interesting. And then Forte, they got $100 million from Ripple to basically, as a grant fund, for them to give out to onboard. And here's where the onboarding thing I think is interesting. Instead of building something and trying to pay for user acquisition, their strategy is to work with existing traditional game publishers and basically to pay for the development time of the publishers to create crypto loops and digital assets inside of their existing games for their existing users. And I think that's a really interesting and smart way to go about user acquisition, because they're basically just annexing all of these other users. And so they're going live, I think, this month. And for the 15 publishers that they have, their total MAU is around, I think, 4 million. Mm-hmm. If they onboard all of it. And so it's a different strategy, and I'm curious as to how you guys think about that, because I struggle with, all right, I like the idea of games, I want blockchain games to succeed, but I'm also an investor, and I need to see users and numbers.
Yeah, from a development standpoint, we were looking at actually putting some maybe NFT angle on existing games. It's really hard unless your game economy is something that could fit NFTs really well. So for example, if you don't have a really economy-driven game that's driven by assets, if you have something that's driven by consumables, for example, it wouldn't do well for just for an NFT economy. But if you have something that, like a lot of RPGs, MMOs, for example, they already have permanent assets, they already have some value, and there's already some trading. So there are certain types of games that lean towards the hardcore that may be a good fit for those kinds of games.
Have you guys ever thought about making, basically kind of hijacking other traditional game audiences?
Yeah.
Like, what if you just you went to like a League of Legends tournament or something, and you basically just airdropped all of their users something? Is there a way to just co-opt those users without the kind of permission?
It's not that easy.
It's not so easy to airdrop DESA users, because if you're speaking about crypto games where everything inside blockchain and you can open the logs and see all the wallets of all the players, so airdrop makes sense here. But with the regular games, with the classical one, players are hidden, so you cannot just take it out.
The thing is that in order to do I need to put some history in before, say, last year when we started creating, release our crypto game, the market and the audience was completely different. They've checked our smart contracts, and doing a semi-blockchain game that has bigger part off-chain was pretty hard, because people didn't believe in those. They want to be sure. Right now, nobody cares about that anymore. If the main assets are on blockchain and they can trade it, then that's okay. So you can do that if you have a game like CryptoDozer, for example, because during third session, it's not a blockchain game. Everything's stored in cookies on server, and then you put that on blockchain if you receive an NFT out of the dozer. So with that funnel, it is easier to go to the events such as League of Legends event and try to onboard the users, because they will encounter similar onboarding experience. But if you take, I don't know, CryptoKitties, for example, or Axie Infinity, or our game, and you go there and try to onboard them, people will hit the wall because they will need to create a wallet, they will need to get some ETH at least to be able to pay for the first transaction or to do something with their asset. And for them, when they are like playing League of Legends and other modern game that are like super good in terms of user experience, this is something extremely old school. And people like only like 30 plus remembers the struggle that games used to have back then. So I think it's going to have a lot of churn rate, like 92% plus, but we need to try.
I would love to see someone do something which is basically kind of modding user or modding avatars. So like if you have your game player in like League of Legends, like it's unique and it has its own unique kind of character and it's yours, right? There's a connection between the player and their avatar. But if there's a way to kind of create value around that for that person,
we already have that in the game.
I think that's interesting.
I'm a fan of a hybrid of the free-to-play and blockchain gameplay. So we haven't seen a lot of that, but with most blockchain games now, you have to pay pay for an asset to get started, and that just turns most people off. And what free-to-play has done very well is that onboarding of people who aren't that committed to your game yet, to try it and see and just see if they like it and see if they stick around. And you'll be able to get a lot more users at the top of your funnel and then convert some of them into blockchain players.
Do you think we are sacrificing the fun of a game because we want it so bad to have valuable assets in the game? Just now, like you mentioned about like the trend that I also seen in 2018, when you launch an NFT or like a blockchain-based games, that everyone checks your code of smart contract. But right now, people are saying that, oh, like I don't do that anymore because I care much about the fun of the game. So what do you guys think of that?
So fun is different things for different people. Some people can like look at the marketplace and look for cheap deals for 2 hours and call that fun. But I think what we're seeing is that we're moving past the pure hardcore crowd and starting to go towards the early adopter or just to the regular gamer crowd. And it gets more and more, I would say, mainstream, and that's a good thing for the space overall.
Cool. And I have a question for JEHAN actually. So like in the way that we see traditional gaming, right? You build the games and then you launch your project and then you start getting revenue. But what we do a lot in crypto games is like we do a pre-sale of assets and then we raise a lot of funds. Like Gods Unchained, they raised like 2 to 3 millions back in 2018, and then they recently raised another 15 mil. But and then in the community, a lot of people say, hey, when is the actual real game launching? So does the model of fundraising in blockchain change the way how people build stuff?
Yeah, I think it does actually. I mean, it's great that Gods Unchained was able to kind of raise all this money.
Yeah.
But I think that for the first few that attempt these types of approaches, it will work because there's no proof that it won't work, right?
Yeah.
It's like a lot of things in kind of the decentralized world, the blockchain world. The people are just throwing things at the wall, and we'll see if in a few years there are actual revenue models or actual business models. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that lasts. If you look at the ICO space, right? Yeah. Everybody used to invest in ICOs on the promise that eventually there would be utility, and that the scarcity of the token and utility of the token would somehow create value or support a particular price level. That's proved to not be true. Like, we know this. Yeah. And that's partially why people aren't doing ICOs, because there's no eventual proven value proposition. I think the same is true, the same kind of like business physics is true for blockchain games. Mm-hmm. You will have to show revenue, you will have to show users, you will have to show stickiness, and you'll have to show a real business model in order for these models to continue. Otherwise, the first few will get out the door, and then people are going to come back and say, well, you really haven't shown traction, you haven't shown users. And traditional VCs look for the same things. Yeah. So I think that reality will set in, and so it's really up to the kind of gaming developers to really quickly create that value for the users and show that people will pay. At the end of the day, somebody has to pay, and it's got to be users who are paying for something they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to comment additionally, like that's completely true. And there is another factor. The thing is that people who are into NFT space for a year, they already know that there is a trend that all the assets that you buy during pre-sale, they drop in price. And recently, the operator did a research about the asset value over time, and it shows the same pattern. In majority of games, the asset drop in price like drastically.
What percentage? Do you know? Roughly.
Up to 4 times at the very least, and some games get like even worse here. And the thing is that maybe I'm wrong on numbers, but I believe it was up to 4 times. But the thing is that people who are into this space, they already know that. So when the first pre-sales came out, they could like ask for bigger numbers, and people were willing to pay for them because in the long run they believed that like you would create a good company, you would attract more users, get a better market share, and the assets will grow in price. And right now, people are not sure. So the whole thing that's happening to pre-sales right now is also, I would say, it's evening up to the market. So it isn't as profitable as it was like in beginning of 2018. I believe Axie Infinity at the very beginning of the last year raised around 900 Ether when it was about $700. So, and they didn't do anything like extremely specific. It was just a pre-sale. And right now there are practically no games that can like raise these numbers on pre-sales.
Yeah, yeah. So and your game is launching pre-sale, and I think a lot of you guys have ongoing pre-sale, right? Like we just now mentioned, right? If we do it early, or maybe when the market has a lot of hypes, and especially Ether price is good, then we all raise a lot of money to build longer. Then how do we solve the problem of raising fund now?
So I see pre-sales actually as more similar to Kickstarter campaign, for example. So the good thing about it is that it brings you and your community closer together because they own the assets. But it's also up to you to prove that you deliver something of value. So when we did our initial pre-sale in May, we actually had a beta of the game up and running. And this is very rare, but people could already play the game, at least the beta version, and decide for themselves whether it was fun or not before they were putting out any money. So you've heard stories of a lot of Kickstarter campaigns where the worst thing that happened was that they were able to raise the minimum amount, and then 2 or 3 years later, like nothing's happening to the project. Yeah. That will happen in games as well, and I think it's up to the developers who are creating these games to show the burden of proof that they probably are, they have a playable beta, or they can deliver on what they're promising before they ask for money from the community.
Cool.
I think it's not correct to compare crypto games with the typical ICO, and when we need to pre-sell something and after that prove the valuable of token. Game development is costly stuff, and you cannot prove your traction in the beginning of game development. It's always big investment in the art, in the coding. So I think for crypto games, more relevant is like classical investment scheme, when you came to investor with your presentation deck, with your previous portfolio, and basically with your skills. And that's the reason why investors believe that you can deliver the content and give you some funds to make these things done.
But again, like VCs don't invest in games generally.
They invest in the team.
That's true.
They invest in the
it's a hit
team.
game already.
They invest in the team, because if you experience it in game development, if you experience it in the blockchain platforms, and you came to investor with a crazy idea that's catch their attention, they probably will invest in these things.
So I guess we're running out of time. So one last question is, if we have to change one thing to solve the problem of bringing blockchain games into end user, what is that you want to change?
Yeah, I'll start off. I think it always goes back to kind of the users, right? And this isn't specific to games. This is for the entire blockchain space. Like, show me the users. Show me the users who are willing to pay for something, so that there will be an organic and kind of sustainable economy. Again, I hope somebody is already doing this or will do this. Like, if there's a way to create a metagame on top of an existing, very popular, traditional, centralized game as a way of adding value to those users, I think that's interesting. I think that's a way to like do a massive potential, cheap customer acquisition by adding value to an existing game rather than trying to create value from scratch. But You guys are the experts, so
I
I just
think
have
the
crazy ideas.
choke point is actually the UX around the wallet. It's very hard to use a MetaMask wallet to run a dApp, and you really have to learn how to do it. And when we're at the point where the wallets become invisible, and they're as easy as doing a Google or Facebook sign-in, I think a user base will take off.
Cool.
I think that the single thing we need to do somehow is to make like Visa and MasterCard allow payments up to $50 without KYC, and that would ease up like everything. User acquisition and onboarding will be a lot easier because you could start targeting people without crypto, with credit cards, and the whole experience won't be as abysmal as it is right now, that you need to take a photo of yourself with your name, decide that you do the KYC, then wait from 5 to 20 minutes, and only then you're allowed to buy crypto. So when this goes down, it'll be a lot easier.
So the market is very interesting, the crypto gaming market, and the audience is quite specific. And what we want to change inside these things, I don't know, give them more time to play, to play with the assets, and more desire to trade it, because basically all the marketplace exist on the commission rates, and if players will exchange their assets more oftenly, the commission will increase, and it helps to improve all the infrastructure.
That's great. So we mentioned about like easier to use wallets, and then fiat terminal like without KYC, and then probably also cross blockchains. It's actually a very good time for me to talk about Dev.com is launching our new product called Dev Store with all these features very soon. So it's a very good advertisement time. Thank you guys. Yeah, thanks guys for having us on this panel discussion. So hope you guys have a good insights of what's happening into blockchain games. Thank you guys.
Thank you. Please give them a big round of applause.